there, and welcome back to our channel. On this channel, we discuss mental health and mental illness with a special focus on how it affects us as a DID system. My name is Shell. I am the host of the system, and today we're going to discuss EDs and DID. And if my camera moves a little bit, it's because my cats keep messing with the setup here. But I do want to put a trigger warning for this video. We are going to be discussing eating disorders, both restrictive and purging type of eating disorders. I will be going into some detail, not anything too extreme, but I do just want to put that out there. So if that is something that you think will be triggering, then perhaps this is not the video to watch, and we will see you in the next one. If that is not going to be too triggering for you, then we're going to talk a little bit about our experience with eating disorders, specifically mine as the host. So I have always had a history of disordered eating. Even when I was a kid, people would always say that I ate like a bird, and I was always like really skinny. I got teased a lot for being the skinny kid, and I didn't like eating. I didn't like chewing. There was a lot of textures for food that I didn't like, and I think probably some of it had to do with the fact that like my dad would force me to eat things that I didn't like, or like I really just, the thought of putting it near my mouth was sickening, and I had to like eat it and swallow it, and if I didn't eat it, then it would be there for my next meal. So I think that might have played a role into my issues with food as well. And this would continue until high school. I don't think I would have said that I had an eating disorder, but I definitely had disordered eating, which another part that may have played a role in that is that I do have ADHD, and I've seen that with neurodivergence, a lot of times there can be disordered eating. I didn't have ARFID, but I did have an unhealthy relationship with food. This would continue into high school, and it became such a problem because I still wasn't eating a whole lot, and I was running track, and my dad was concerned about my weight, so he actually bought protein powder for me to like make sure that I wasn't going to lose too much weight while running track. But yeah, like, I mean, and maybe this is typical high school student anyway, but like lunch would be like a Dr. Pepper and a bag of chips. You know, breakfast I rarely ate, and then dinner was whatever was made at home. And then sometimes I would refuse to eat dinner because if I got mad at my parents, I used not eating as punishment, even though looking back, it definitely punished me more than it would even affect them. But that was my mindset when I was a teen, was like, I'm mad at you, and so I'm not going to eat, whether or not that makes sense. Now, the disordered eating didn't really become a huge problem until I got into college, and particularly my senior year of college. The eating disorder started becoming a disorder around the time that my mental health in general was declining. And because I was already skinny, it was not easy for people to tell that something was going on. And especially because I was living on my own, there was nobody to police whether or not I was eating. And at social events, I would take I'd get a plate, and I'd get like the bare minimum of food, like just enough food to make it like make people not question, but not enough that I felt like I was going to like put on a ton of weight from it. And a couple of things went into my eating disorder at the time. And part of it was that I had by that point felt like being thin was my identity, and I have had issues with identity. I have BPD, and also having DID is an identity disorder, and as the host of a DID system, sometimes it can feel like you as the host lack any kind of identity. And so for me, being skinny is what made me me. And so, you know, when you get into college, your body starts to change, and as I saw the numbers go up even just a little bit, it was like, oh no, I can't gain weight. I have to stay skinny. If I am not skinny, then I don't know who I am. Another thing that went into it was that I was not in a good place mentally, and I just wanted to disappear. And it did kind of go hand in hand with my suicidal tendencies at the time. It was just another way for me to hurt myself. And I figured eventually I could become so thin that I would just disappear. And it wasn't helped by the fact that that was the time that I watched Girl Interrupted, which I will never recommend to anyone because it was so triggering for me and us as a system. But in that movie, there's a character that has an eating disorder, and there's a scene where she's walking on the snow, and she's not like dipping into the snow. She's not leaving any footprints because she's not heavy enough to impact the snow. And that gave me a goal. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be so thin that I didn't leave footprints, which went hand in hand with me wanting to disappear. Another thing is eating disorders are ultimately about control. And I felt like my life was completely out of control, and I was trying to grasp onto any level of control that I could hold on to. And then as the eating disorder progressed and like it wasn't noticeable and I wasn't losing a whole lot of weight, like I never lost enough weight to actually be diagnosed with anorexia. I was diagnosed with an eating disorder not otherwise specified, but that wouldn't come until later in grad school. So not losing the weight definitely made me feel like a failure, because I felt like if I'm not eating, then I should be losing weight. And if I'm not losing weight, then I'm still eating too much. And I would like continuously limit how much I was eating until there would be days where I wasn't eating anything. And I became very concerned about the calories that I was taking in. I became concerned about the, like even with like drinks and stuff, I would make sure that I wasn't drinking anything that was like too high in fat or sugar. And it also was like nobody around me noticed anything was wrong, which was both a blessing and a curse. I didn't want anyone to know what I was dealing with, but at the same time, I wanted people to know what I was dealing with. And that goes hand in hand with how I felt about my mental health in general my entire life, is that I have to keep it as hidden as possible so that nobody notices. But then when nobody notices, it makes me feel even worse, because then it just reinforces the fact that like I'm not important, I don't matter. And finally, at one point, one of my coworkers noticed, she started paying attention to what I was eating at like meetings and gatherings and things like that. And she realized that like I would barely put anything on my plate. And what I did have on my plate, I would maybe take a few bites out of. And she called me out on it. And this is what makes eating disorders so difficult to treat. And it's so hard to help somebody that has an eating disorder, because I felt so good about the fact that she noticed that it meant that I was doing something right. And there is this weird desire to, you know, I wanted people to think something was wrong. I wanted to, because I felt like that was how I would know people cared about me, is if they noticed something was wrong. But all it did was encourage me to keep going, because, okay, somebody's noticing. If I keep going, more people will notice, and then people will care about me. It's a really like twisted way of looking at things, but that's where my mind was at the time. Now, why was I not losing the weight? So this is where having DID comes in. I didn't know it at the time because I didn't know I had DID. I didn't know I had alters. But what I did know is that on days where it had been a while since we'd eaten, maybe it'd been a couple of days, I would go and get a burger from McDonald's and eat the burger. And then after I ate the burger, I'd be like, why did I just eat that? And then I would go and try to purge it, but the burger wasn't enough to allow me to purge. Like my stomach wasn't full enough for it to really trigger that. And I now know that it was Jessica who was making sure the body stayed fed. She realized that what I was doing to the body was not healthy. And so she was doing what she could to get nutrition into the body. And when you don't keep food in your home, when you don't have energy because you've not been eating, the easiest way to get food is to go to a fast food place and get something real quick and eat it. So that's what she would do, is she would go to McDonald's, get a burger, and at least she had put something in the body. And she always made sure to only eat just enough to get us some nourishment and never eat enough for me to feel full. So she was definitely very much balancing the like, okay, I can eat this much, and then if I only eat this much, she's not going to be able to throw it up. So now I know that back then I was battling another alter who was trying to save us from the eating disorder, even while it got worse for me. So I think that's why I never dropped down enough weight to really qualify for anorexia, is because somebody was, I say sabotaging my efforts, but in all actuality, she was probably saving us. Now, I didn't get over the eating disorder until I found myself in a happier place. I met my husband, and we would go and have meals together, and I was actually feeling happy. And so I didn't feel the need to control my life with my food. I didn't feel the need to disappear so I could allow myself to eat again. I did get over that particular instance of the eating disorder, but it is something that has continued to plague me my life. It would come back and go away again throughout my marriage. I look back on photos that are pre-pandemic, and now I look at them and I'm like, I look sick. Like, why was nobody worried? Like, I have no meat on my bones. I look like I am ill. But at the time, all I could think was like, oh, can I get down to a size 2? Oh, can I get down to a size 0? And that was just, it would always pop up in another way of, if I was losing control of my life, then this was a way for me to gain control. Or if I was depressed, I could use it as a way to express that. And with the depression would also come like that feeling of like, oh, you don't deserve to eat, like you're not worth that. My relationship with food has so many different factors that have come in to affect it. Now, during quarantine, I was put on a medication for my bipolar disorder that made me gain weight. And it actually, I was having to eat so much that I actually got a diagnosis of binge eating disorder. But the binge eating disorder was a side effect of the medication that I was taking. And it finally got to the point where I couldn't even look in the mirror. I was so disgusted with myself, and the way that I looked was making me depressed. And so it was kind of like this medication wasn't doing me any good because I was depressed just because of my body. So I talked to my psychiatrist and we got off that medication, and I lost a little bit of weight, but for the most part, I've mostly maintained my weight. I haven't gone up or down in like 2 years, and I still have issues with that. I do struggle with body dysmorphia, and that definitely contributes to the eating disorder habits. And I am still not happy with how my body looks. I hate hearing that I look healthy. I hate when people tell me I look healthy, because to me that means like, oh, I have too much weight on me. Like, healthy equals fat. And the thing about it is that, like, I don't have a problem with heavier people. I think that full-bodied women are beautiful, but when I turn that lens on myself, I can't see it. And that, when I was talking to my therapist about it, he was like, well, that's body dysmorphia. And it's difficult because I still struggle with it. I'm getting to a better place because, you know, when people tell me I look good, I have a hard time believing that. But I am now in a relationship where I am now able to actually start believing that when it's said to me. I'm not quite there yet, but it's getting better. And I still struggle with disordered eating, but that again, I think will always be an issue because of the ADHD. Jessica still will be the one that feeds the body, and some of the other alters as well. Now, you know, somebody will be out and somebody else in the headspace will be like, oh, we haven't eaten yet. And the person who's fronting will get up and eat something. And the other thing is, like, the other alters don't have body dysmorphia, aside from like Cameron, because he has gender dysphoria when he's fronting in the body, but none of the others seem to have a problem with how we look. And when Brandy was thinking about it earlier today, she brought up the point that, like, the other alters, this doesn't feel like their body. Like, when they look in the mirror, they're not seeing themselves. So the weight doesn't affect them because they already aren't identifying with the body. And so they don't have any kind of emotional connection to it. So things continue to be a struggle. I have to consistently be on the lookout for, if my symptoms of an eating disorder are flaring up again, I have to start looking at, like, how am I viewing myself? How am I viewing food? Am I starting to count calories? Am I starting to restrict certain foods? Am I just plain not eating? And now that I am aware of the system, it's more helpful because everybody kind of plays a role in making sure the body gets fed. And I do think that even if I were to drop into being in a full-blown eating disorder again, that the other alters wouldn't let it get too far. So yeah, that it makes things complicated when different parts of you are feeling different things. And I was very angry when I was in the midst of my eating disorder that, like, for some reason I did not have the discipline to just not eat. And it's because Jessica was feeding us, and now I am thankful to her for that. But having DID does make things complicated, and it makes things like other disorders kind of difficult to deal with because not everybody's going to experience the same things, and sometimes one alter can sabotage another, not on purpose, but just because we see things differently from one another. But we are continuing to grow as a system and learn how to work together and communicate. If you have any questions or any stories of your own, please leave them below in the comments. We always read our comments and we always appreciate hearing from you guys. And until next time, take care and stay well.